Good day, you unintelligent masses. So the other day I was on my way to go dig up a treasure map, as you do, and on my way there I actually got sauced, as you do, and was stuck running in place for a few minutes. I took the time to contemplate my life, my existence, and then a realization dawned on me. Oh shit, I forgot to mention something in my recent High Isle Gold Guide. The new public dungeon fragments. I'd like to briefly discuss this topic with you all in relation to earning gold, surprise surprise, but I'd also like to talk about one particular notion that's slightly different with this particular dungeon fragment, and I'd be interested to hear your take on it. Typically, the adds that reside in the public dungeons that are found in chapter zones have a chance to drop fragments for rare items. When enough fragments are combined, an item of sorts can be created. If the public dungeon fragments are from a newer chapter, and if they're for a cosmetic related item, such as a costume, they tend to go for really impressive amounts on the guild traders, impressive enough that it's arguably worthwhile to farm DLC public dungeons for them as a means to make gold. Even the non-cosmetic dungeon fragments go for a pretty penny. Personally, I don't have very cracked RNG, so I'm not the biggest fan of farming RNG for gold. But the nice thing about farming a DLC public dungeon, and a notion that I've mentioned on occasion in previous videos, is that you can actually earn a lot of other valuable items on the side, and fairly reliably as well. These items include gear that you can sell if the sets are fairly valuable, or a decon for upgrade mats and style mats, as well as other random materials that may pertain to the kind of monsters that you're fighting, such as decorative wax if you're fighting chitinous creatures, for example. Chests can also spawn in public dungeons, so running into these is an additional bonus, seeing as they can drop set pieces and even DLC paintings, which are pretty pricey. Moreover, because public dungeon adds tend to be clumped pretty close to one another and in pretty vast quantities, you can even get a solid XP farm going. You won't be getting nearly as much XP as you would if you ran through Skyreach or BRP, don't get me wrong, but the XP gain opportunity is certainly a noteworthy bonus if you're farming items for gold. So see, that's not too bad, right? You have a fair amount of gold making opportunities when it comes to exploring or running laps around a DLC public dungeon, and it's a fairly new player or even new trader friendly endeavor as well. You can go for the possibility of getting these rare fragments and stay for how reliably you can get other goodies. So even if your RNG is cooked and you didn't get what you came for, you at least still got some other nice things for your time. So how do the two new public dungeons fare? Are they worthwhile to farm? At the moment, I would say yeah, for sure. The Hodge motive fragments sell for a shitload, seeing as they're brand spanking new, and this little dude do be pretty cute. Unfortunately, the sets that drop from High Isle are kinda DD mega doo-doo, but you can at least decon your steadfast metal gear. If you do so, you do have a chance at receiving the valuable style material known as the Stendar stamp. It's needed in order to create the new High Isle furnishings, which is why they're worth something. Because there are chests in these public dungeons, you also have a chance to receive expensive High Isle paintings. In terms of how farmable these dungeons are, I would say that they err on the little less farmable side, especially the Spire of the Crimson Coin. This dungeon is incredibly atmospheric and immersive, and part of that immersion, unfortunately, does mean that there aren't just random ass ads being chilling around every corner for no reason. I found that the ads were few and far between, even when I was there by myself, so I knew that they weren't being killed by others. The best strategy for me was to run around the edges of this outer portion of the dungeon. I ran into a few bosses while doing so as well, which was nice because killing them guarantees you an overland set piece. Running laps around Ghost Haven Bay was an experience that was much more resemblant of the typical public dungeon farming experience, where there are lots of ads fairly close to one another, and by the time you've finished a loop around a particular portion of the dungeon, the ads have respawned and you can continue farming the exact same route uninterrupted. So you might be thinking, okay, fuck the Spire of the Crimson Coin, all my homies hate the Spire of the Crimson Coin, I'm just gonna farm Ghost Haven Bay to get my mini turtle, easy. Well, that's not quite possible. I'll explain why in a sec. Let's talk about some changes that ZOS has made to this particular kind of public dungeon item, and specifically how to go about acquiring it. Over the years, ZOS has toyed around with a couple different fragment acquisition strategies. God, that sounds so nerdy. For example, 3 years ago when Elsewhere came out, there were 2 different public dungeon items, one for each public dungeon, and you just needed 10 fragments of each item to be able to create it. This was already kind of different than the previously established fragment system seen in Somerset and Vardenfell. A year later, when Greymoor came out, things were a little different again. In one dungeon, you had to collect specific outfit fragment pieces to create an entire outfit. In another, you had to collect 50 fragments to create a pretty neat looking target dummy. Last year, when Blackwood came out, ZOS made it so that each of the 2 public dungeons had items that required 50 fragments as well. And this year, it looks like 50 is the magic number once again, seeing as 50 total fragments are required to create this little guy. The thing is, those 50 fragments are split between the 2 dungeons in High Isle. This means that you have to collect and consume 25 fragments from one dungeon and 25 from another to create this pet. This also means that instead of having 2 public dungeon items with this chapter, we only get 1. Admittedly, I do find this to be a little disappointing. Any instance where we get less content than we normally do is always a bit of a bummer. But I'm curious to hear what you all think about this change to the public dungeon fragment system. Do you like it? Are you indifferent? Is there a previous dungeon fragment model that you appreciate the most? I know that a lot of people have asked for more rare and super cool grindable items in this game, things that you can earn through time and dedication, or a shitload of gold that you can show off or flex in front of the peasants, something that showcases how rich you are or how hard you worked for something, or how badly you need to touch grass. And I think that the 50 fragment system really accomplishes this. I mean, how many people do you see walking around with the Thrafe debutante gown? Not very many, because this cost over 3 mil on my platform. And I think that's kind of neat. It gives you something to work towards. So I don't mind the thought of having to collect so many fragments or fork over so much gold. I just personally mind that we only have 1 neat public dungeon item to look forward to collecting and selling this year instead of the usual 2. But what do you think? Either way, if you do own a copy of High Isle, consider running around these eerie but beautifully designed public dungeons as a means to make gold, should this particular gold strat resonate with you. And if you don't own High Isle but didn't know that farming DLC public dungeons for fragments and other goodies was a viable and fairly reliable gold strategy, now you know. You're welcome. Alright. That's all for today. I kept it short for this video since I've got some more ambitious projects to work on for this coming month. Thank you all for making it this far in this video, and thank you to my YouTube members for sponsoring this content. I'll see you gamers in the next one. Cheers.